A package just arrived in the mail. It's the return of an old friend, the Casio SK-1. This keyboard is legendary. Released in November 1986, it was the first mass-produced sampling keyboard ever. I had one of these in about 2001, and I remember liking it and playing with it quite a bit. Well, I don't know if I lost it when I moved or what, but at some point my SK-1 disappeared. In the intervening years, this keyboard has only grown in popularity, which is why when I saw one going for dirt cheap on eBay, I clicked buy it now without any hesitation. I'm hoping to reconnect with this little keyboard and maybe figure out the secret behind its cult status. So for starters, I should say, the reason this unit was so cheap is because the seller says it's broken. Let's see what we have to work with. It doesn't even power on. I suspect the power switch is just corroded. Ah, there we go. I'm gonna plug this thing in so we can get some better sound. So it does have some preset sounds. Some of them aren't bad. Classic 80s brass. As well as a weird sine wave synthesizer. But of course the main event here is the sampling functionality. I'm gonna try to sample my voice. Testing, testing. Oh good, the sampling doesn't work. This may be a very short video. I wonder if it's just a problem with the microphone. This does have a jack for an external microphone, so let's try that. Hello?
Hello?
Okay, it works fine.
Hello?
I'm guessing that microphone thing is why the seller thought it was broken. So yeah, when you press the sampling button, the SK-1 records a little snippet of sound. I'm gonna try singing a constant note into it. If you press this A, you can hear as faithful a recording as it's capable of reproducing. And then if you press one of the keys to the right of that A, you'll hear a sped up, higher pitched version. And if you press one of the keys to the left, you'll hear a slowed down, lower pitched version. And we can make it loop by pressing this button. Because each key is played back at a different speed, if you play a chord, the loop points all come at different moments. It's really hard to stay in rhythm with all those samples triggering and re-triggering. Let's try another sound source. Instead of just recording one note this time, I'm gonna play two notes. I really like how fuzzy the sound is. I'm gonna try turning looping on again. Oh, that's really beautiful. Because they're all triggering and re-triggering at different intervals, you get these sort of random cascades of notes. One thing I'm noticing about the sound on this thing is it's pretty muddy. The SK-1 has a sampling rate of about 9,000 Hertz. One of the challenges of having a low sample rate like that is a problem called aliasing. Aliasing means, among other things, that the sampler can't reproduce high frequencies without also introducing that distinctive, hazy, crunchy sound. The way a lot of old samplers get around this problem is they actually just get rid of all of the high frequencies using a low-pass filter. I'm guessing that's what's going on here, and that's why the SK-1 sounds a bit muddy. I'm gonna do some research. One of the great things about having a keyboard that's just so legendary and that's been used by so many different people is there are a million articles about it. People have been modifying and circuit bending this keyboard since literally 1987. I was able to find this old website with a link that says Casio SK-1 filter bypass mod. It sounds pretty promising, and it looks like a really easy modification, so let's give it a shot. Obviously, my first step is to take the batteries out and open it up. Once I'm inside, I discover there's another circuit board that needs to be unscrewed. Now that I've got access, I'm ready to get out the soldering iron. The actual mod is super simple. I'm going to clip this connection on the circuit board. And now I'm going to take this 1000 ohm resistor and I'm going to connect it up here. As you can see, I'm attaching this yellow heat tube to try to prevent it from shorting out other parts of the circuit. And now I'm going to connect it down here. That's it. That's the entire mod. Now all I have to do is put this thing back together. Here we are, moment of truth. Oh, it does sound different. I'm going to plug it in so I can really hear it. So this is what it sounded like before. And this is what it sounds like now. So yeah, huge difference. We've added a lot more high end. I think it's very subjective whether or not I made it sound better, but it's nice to hear what's actually being recorded. Of course, no exploration of an old Casio is complete without putting it through a bunch of cool effects. Now, normally when I do this kind of video, I get out a bunch of fancy boutique effects pedals, which is a lot of fun. But this time, I wanted to try something a little different. I wanted to put it through my own Refractions plugin, which just so happens to be back on sale right now. I'm going to play a note on the Casio, and now I'm going to turn up the slider on Refractions, and we can hear the magic start to happen. Even though I'm holding down one key on the Casio, Refractions is actually sampling the sound from the Casio, and using that sample to play back a little sequence using the sound that it hears. I'll usually hit the randomize button until I find a sequence that I like, and then I'll turn the mix down and use Refractions as kind of an atmospheric effect. Of course, that effect sounds very different depending on the source material. Here's what it sounds like with the ukulele. I really like the aliasing on the Casio. I feel like I could play with this for hours. I wonder what happens if I try to sample one Casio with another Casio. That's pretty cool. Let's try the piano preset. Oh, I love that. Somehow, the Casio PT-10 sounds even better when it's sampled through the SK-1. All in all, I should say that the SK-1 is much cooler than I remembered. Back in 2001, when I first got one of these, I really wanted to make like high-quality violin samples, and yeah, it's woefully inadequate for that task. Of course, nowadays with decent sampler and my whole computer setup, I can make any sample that I want, so I'm free to appreciate the SK-1 for what it is. It's easy to see why the SK-1 was so popular. It was dirt cheap, and it lets you experiment with sound using just about the simplest interface ever. It's been about 40 years since this thing was released, and no other company has really come along and released another product that fills the same niche. I found this review of the SK-1 from November 1986. Overall, it's a very positive article. They're rightfully amazed that Casio managed to package so many features into something so cheap. At the same time, they point out all of the shortcomings that any rational person would point out. Namely, the sound quality isn't very good and the recording time is only 1.4 seconds. Of course, over time, all of those limitations have also become part of its appeal. Lo-fi sound in general is best appreciated when it's not all you have to work with. In the context of a modern studio with crystal clear recording quality, we're free to listen to something like an old tape deck with unstable pitch and hear it as tragic and beautiful, and even have it conjure up some idealized version of the past. The Casio SK-1's sound, that 8-bit crunch, is very much in the same ballpark. I have the most fun with it when I lean into its weirdness. For example, because its recording time is really short, and because it doesn't allow you to adjust the loop points of your samples, the result is that they often sound glitchy and chopped. Once again, it's an aesthetic that's much more desirable now than when the unit was released. In fact, there are $400 pedals that seek to replicate exactly these kinds of textures. If you're an electronic musician and you've never owned one of these, I highly recommend picking one up if you can get it for less than $100. That's probably the most I'd pay. If you enjoyed this video, It'd be great if you could hit like. And if you've not yet done so, now is a great time to subscribe. I've got a ton of exciting videos coming up. As I mentioned earlier, Refractions, the effects plugin I used in this video, is on sale. It will be $29 for the next 2 weeks, after which it goes up to its full price of $99. Also, I took my favorite sounds from this video and turned them into a sample library for patrons. The Patreon is just $5 a month, and every month you get an exclusive sample library just for patrons. And you can actually download those samples right from within the Decent Sampler plugin, which I think is very convenient. Okay, I think that's it. See you soon.